Hello and welcome to the latest Capital and Kayfabe. I am your co-host, JP Ajapaz, with the two-man power trip, of course. Joining me is the political pundit himself and also wrestling historian, Mr. Jack Hunter. Jack, welcome in. How you doing?
Great to be with you. Excited about our conversation today.
Man, every week something crazy happens in this world and you don't kind of expect it, you don't see it, and especially from this regime. I wanted to talk on about this first and kind of mention this first and kind of get your thoughts on this because I feel like I need to learn a little bit more about what the hell's going on here. But what is going on with this list, this Epstein list? It doesn't exist. The FBI, the DOJ, what happened to Don Pambondi's desk? You got to break this down for me. What in the world is going on here with Jeffrey Epstein?
Wouldn't the world like to know? And that's the reason so many Trump supporters are very angry at him and his administration right now because they told us they would let us know. And now they're saying there's not even anything to know. Apparently, Ghislaine, however you pronounce her name, Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail for no reason at all. Why would anybody disparage Jeffrey Epstein for all this time? Apparently, he did nothing. It was fine. There were no victims, even though they've come forward and said they were victims. They're just making it up. Yeah, this is a big outrage. Pam Bondi, the attorney general appointed by Trump in his second term, not long ago, detailed some of, I guess broadly, detailed maybe is a little bit too intimate way to put it, but basically said that they know Jeffrey Epstein did some bad things. She basically said that the info, the client list, however you want to say it, the evidence was sitting on her desk, that it being transparent, the public knowing about was imminent, and people were waiting with bated breath. Obviously, we want to know what kind of powerful people he was involved with, if there was blackmail involved, as intelligence does, because a lot of people thought that this guy was part of intelligence, whether American or many people speculated with Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence agencies. And what they were speculating, so he had this weird island where he had underage girls and he would bring powerful people there. And we know certain things about Prince Andrew and some others, but lots of people went there. What people wanted to know was he bringing these powerful men there, having them involved in lurid affairs, for putting it PG terms, with people who were underage? Some people would call it kids. If you're under 18, you're not an adult. You can't consent. Was he doing that and then having photos or video or whatever you might have and blackmailing him? That was always the speculation. Now, I don't like lynch mobs. I don't like speculation. I believe in due process. I believe in courts. And I think most agree with me in that the process is important in determining true guilt or true innocence, and certainly in seeking justice. That's all people were wanting. Jeffrey Epstein was obviously up to something based on the little bit we know. And Trump's attorney general said she had the goods on him and it would become transparent in the near future. And this week they said there's no list and there's no evidence of blackmail. And everybody, the most loyal Trump supporter you can find out there, almost all of them, with very few exceptions, are like, nah, we're not buying this. This just isn't the case. How did one person put it? Trump was elected because the voters thought he would stand up to elites. And this is showing them not only is he one of them, but he's willing to do anything and tell any lie to protect them. That's not what MAGA voters voted for. And that's why people are mad, on top of wanting to know what this apparently awful man did to these young women and kids. That needs to be known, and who was involved in all that. This isn't just some like TMZ, I need to know this gossip about something. This is about serious crimes that go all the way up to the upper echelon of society and possibly government and entertainment and other things we don't know. And that's why we need to know. And it needs to come to light, and justice needs to be served. And the Trump said this week, nope, we don't have any evidence for that. We're not even going to do it. When Trump was asked about it in a press conference, he's like, why are we still talking about this? That really pissed a lot of people off. I'm talking about MAGA supporters. So it'll be interesting to see what comes in the coming days and weeks with this. I think it's the biggest blow to his coalition that brought him to the White House in 2024 to date, even bigger than striking Iran. We're sending weapons to Ukraine again, which is stupid and what the opposite of what he promised. But all these things, Tucker Carlson and Sagar Enjeti, the host of Breaking Points, had a on Tucker's podcast recently. We're just talking about how this is busting the Trump MAGA coalition apart, with the Epstein thing being the cherry on top, like nothing else.
It's just crazy to me because his response was honestly weird, and then Pam Bondi's response was even weirder. Like that was even kind of made it even worse.
Well, you know, Elon Musk, when they had their falling out, said the reason the Epstein list isn't released is because Trump's on it or in it.
Right.
He kind of walked it back. The tweet, the X post has been deleted, but why would Trump talk a big game? Why would Pam Bondi do all this stuff and then do a complete 180? That's not conspiracy theory thinking. That's just basic law.
Right. And the thing that's weird too is there's no evidence of Trump and really Epstein, basically since like 89. Like there's no ties, no pictures of them, like nothing. And whenever there's pictures of them together, it's all old stuff. So it's not like he's covering up for himself. So you would think it almost seems like he's covering up for somebody else or another elite or whoever. You know what I mean? It just seems like he's covering up for others. Definitely.
You would think, and there was a story, this is during Trump's first term or maybe afterward, but certainly before his second term, that Epstein was at Mar-a-Lago or something like that and was hitting on women or being, showing his ass, basically, not acting properly, and that Trump had him removed from the premises. If that story is legit, but I'm just saying, to your point, who's he protecting if it's not himself? And I'm not pointing fingers saying that Trump did that. Why would you remove somebody from your premises that's acting like that if you're cool with it? There's a lot of questions there, but their presentation of this is unacceptable, and the most hardcore Trump supporter basically agrees with what I just said.
So weird, though, to kind of that was a huge crux of MAGA, really, but just of a lot of different people like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. It was like a big talking point for all of them, and they either look inept or what a lot of people think it's not a conspiracy theory because they are covering stuff up, but it looks like it's a even further conspiracy theory.
You can find video footage and X posts from current FBI Director Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, who's in the administration, from Donald Trump Jr., from Vice President J.D. Vance, all saying, why isn't anybody investigating the Epstein situation? Where's the Epstein files? All of them clamoring for it until they didn't this week. That's fishy.
Super fishy. And another thing, too, is they were very big with protecting Israel. So is it something to do with Epstein and Israel? Is it like a double down here?
That's always been the speculation. Why would this guy get away with all these powerful people in his midst and flying on his Lolita Express private plane? Why would he get away with all that? Who was it? Was it Alex Acosta? Somebody said years ago, leave this alone. He's intelligence. And okay. Somebody that would know. So how could you get away with that? If you're intelligent, you can get away with pretty much anything. If he's gathering information for blackmail purposes or to further the agenda of a government, whether Israel, America's, or something combined, you get away with stuff like that. A point was made by Sagar Enjeti in his interview with Tucker Carlson that what the Trump administration did in ignoring that there's an Epstein case to be made or that there might be any evidence is a signal not to the voters who are hopping mad at him right now, but to elites saying, no matter how bad it is, we've got your back. Look at what we're doing now. So I think that's accurate.
If you think about it, is that all to do with maybe the big, beautiful bill and getting elites kind of, I don't know, maybe more tax breaks than they really should be getting? I mean, is it all kind of intertwined here with everything going on in this campaign, this administration?
It's possible. And on the day this happened with the Epstein stuff and Pam Bondi is the third time Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the White House in just 6 months of this second term. So I don't know. I don't, everybody speculates. We're doing a podcast. We do that. We're going to speculate about some All In and some wrestling stuff here in a second.
Yeah.
We're not stupid either. We're citizens of the United States, and there's things that aren't being connected here that it just doesn't make sense. Every American, whether you're left, right, in the middle, or something else, has the right and is right to wonder about all this.
Crazy too, like because the conspiracy theorists are now turned up, and I feel like now there's more of them popping up. People that you would think were never a conspiracy theory now are throwing it out there, like, "Oh, it's a cover up. Oh, this and that." So it's like people even that were saying you're a conspiracy theorist are now flipping it and becoming somewhat of conspiracy theorists right now.
Yeah, people talk about JFK assassination conspiracy theories. People know that the official story on that wasn't right. I don't know what happened, but like, it's just too fishy.
Yes,
Lee Harvey Oswald takes him out by himself and gets shot like immediately, and we don't like people are right to ask questions. They're right to ask questions about this. You're not a kook to do so. You are giving too much trust and credibility to government to not question stuff like that. Like, we're Americans. We founded this
right.
country by telling a king an ocean away to go to hell, and we're doing our own thing. So, yeah, the American spirit requires that you be like, no, what's going on? What are you doing in our name with our tax dollars, and how are you abusing this government that we elected you to represent? But it looks like you're doing something far, far beyond just that.
And the term I guess the kids use these days is unalive. They threw that out there too, that he
Right.
unalived himself on that one. That so the FBI and the DOJ said, which everyone was saying wasn't true. So now they're even throwing that little wrench in there too. Like, oh yeah, that they were right. That did happen.
Right. And they originally said there was no footage of Epstein's cell, and then they found the footage, but 1 minute's missing.
Yes.
And I think Pam Bondi said, "Oh, if you look at every day, that exact same minute's missing. That doesn't make. Come on, we're not that stupid."
Man, crazy. You mentioned No Kings and the real No Kings Day, which was July 4th,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's technically the real No Kings Day. That goes by. And Kevin Nash, who loves politics, former WCW and WWF World Heavyweight Champion, didn't celebrate. Did you see that? Kevin Nash didn't
yeah.
celebrate 4th of July. What's up with Big Sexy?
I don't know, because like, look, we've discussed this in the past. I don't dislike entertainers, whether in wrestling or movies or music, because of their political views. I separate the two, and I love Kevin Nash. I love the
Yeah, me too.
NWO and Big Diesel and all that.
Yep.
As far as me looking at his comments, I think they're absolutely ridiculous. I think he probably has Trump derangement syndrome. And what I mean by that, because there are people who love Trump and hate Trump that have it, is you're not looking at the world objectively. You're like, God, I hate Trump, so I hate this country and these people that voted for him. Or, God, I love Trump so much that if you're against him, I hate. Like, that's Trump derangement syndrome. You're
Yeah.
not looking at the situation. And he comes across to me as somebody who's kind of in that headspace now. I say that respectfully. There are many people that I admire and love that do that. Smart people, has nothing to do with your intelligence level. It's an emotional thing. I think that's what that is. He was talking about how ugly his country is, or something like that. Well, you can
Yep.
say that about any country and any political reality. Nothing's perfect. It's funny. Early on, wasn't Kevin Nash like a thin blue line, kind of right-leaning, Trump-friendly guy? Like, I'm talking about like 2015, 2016, unless I'm misremembering that. So who knows what happened in his trajectory. I like Trump to the degree that he's useful for things I care about. If he says Bush lied about WMDs and maybe we shouldn't start another stupid war, I'm like, Trump is absolutely right. That is not my
Right.
love for Trump. That is my anti-war stance that I've had for as long as I've been an adult. And somebody important who a lot of people like is saying it. Cool. But Trump himself, when he does stupid stuff, it doesn't affect me. All these politicians are stupid in different ways. He's probably the most entertaining among them. I would always say that, I only voted for Trump once out of the 3 times I had a chance to. It was the most recent time. But like, Trump's one of the best wrestling characters out there. I mean, you couldn't make this guy up. What a cartoon, right?
Yeah. He's got that it factor. He's got that ability to create catchphrases on the fly, right? Like without even thinking about it. Like The Rock, he just creates catchphrases just out of thin air. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, everybody, Lion, Ted Cruz, what do you, Little Marco Rubio before he worked for him. But yeah, he comes up with all these names like The Rock, or just some heel wrestler
Yeah.
trying to interview people. It's pretty funny.
It's just crazy to think like, okay, what we were thinking about with Trump, like The border, okay. He kind of been doing well with that and doing good. I know people are against ICE and stuff, but as far as what he said he was going to do, he actually did it. But as
Yeah.
far as Ukraine and Epstein and like all this other stuff, the big beautiful bill, the spending, not so much.
Yeah, somebody like me who foreign policy and certainly size of government spending, but foreign policy is a big one. He was the only person saying anything that made sense. He said it was going to end the Ukraine-Russia war immediately, which he didn't. And I didn't think he would, but like that is the thing to say. Like, let's stop sending money to Ukraine and fueling a proxy war between the United States and Russia, in which lots of people are dying and nothing's going to change. It's going to turn out bad for everybody. The correct answer is let's stop doing this. That was his campaign promise. He said it throughout. Well, now we were back to sending weapons to Ukraine. When he first got in office in his second term, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff booked it over there to Israel, said, I need to meet with Netanyahu. His aide said he's not available. BS, get him here. That happened. Ceasefire happened immediately. That's what I voted for. We're in a completely different place now. The ceasefire broke. We continue sending billions to Israel, and the slaughter that's happening in Palestine is on our dime. We're paying for that. So, two of the big things I voted for Trump for, he's doing the exact opposite. What a disappointment. The big, beautiful bill, some of the Republicans I admire in Congress, like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul and Representative Warren Davidson, voted against it precisely because it adds $2.47 trillion to the deficit. And whatever other good things are in there, the tax cuts, that's a great thing, making those permanent from 2017. There's some other things in there, but no taxes on tips. If I'm understanding now that might be not followed through on, which is awful. But if you're adding to the debt and deficit, those three Republicans were right to vote against it, no matter how much everybody screams. We've got to go in the opposite direction on spending and put this debt in the down direction, not the up.
Speaking of Trump, I know I kind of caught you surprised when we were talking beforehand here. Possibly, he's saying, for USA 250, which means next year, July 4th, when America turns 250 years old, he wants to have a UFC card. So not UFC 250, because that happened a couple of years ago. We're talking about USA 250. And I don't know if you saw this, a nice little AI footage, basically the octagon and some fans right in front of the White House.
I'd be there. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know if they're allowed to do that. And Trump says stuff all the time, but that's pretty neat. And look, he's friends with Dana White. He has been for a long time. He goes to all these fights, which I think is really cool to have a public president who's like trying to be an everyman and going to things. Not that UFC tickets aren't very expensive. They are, but I think you know what I'm saying. If this actually happened, I think it'd be pretty neat. And what's more all-American than a UFC event at the White House?
It does seem like a crazy idea, but is it that crazy, right? With Trump, you never know. I mean, he might say, I want it to happen, and let's make it happen here.
Yeah. And if he can, he would. And I think Dana White would be totally all about it, and TKO and the whole thing. So maybe we get a WWE event there next. That'd be cool.
I was going to say, should the WWE follow suit? Should the WWE then? If UFC's going to, should WWE have a White House event?
It's a TKO thing, right? Like, why wouldn't you do that? The only thing more all-American than UFC at the White House is WWE at the White House.
Yeah. I'd say WWE even more American. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the lexicon there.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about wrestling back in Greco-Roman times, but professional wrestling as we know it is an all-American. So, yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Would they be able to charge for tickets and stuff? Like, how would that work? Is it like the government property?
And the Secret Service, like, how would you do all that? I mean, I live in D.C. part-time or have in recent times and have been in and around. I haven't been in the White House, but I've been around it. And, like, you can't do anything. You can't blow your nose the wrong way. So I don't know how the logistics of that. But if they could pull it off, they probably will.
Such a cool idea in like principle, because like the White House in the background and then the foreground could be the ring or the octagon. It's just a kind of a funny thing he threw out there. Then Dana White kind of backed up and said, yes, we're working on it for next year, for July 4th. So it's like, wait a second, did Trump surprise and throw a curveball, or was he ready for that? Because he kind of seemed like he was ready for it.
Who knows? Like, he will just say things sometimes you don't know. Yeah. I don't know. He's unpredictable.
I just wonder, like, if it is allowed, it is illegal, what would be the security kind of like around it? You'd have to triple and quadruple security. I mean, you would have to go pretty crazy. You never know who'd show up.
Yeah, I envision people with machine guns and all sorts of crazy stuff. I saw Metallica in Charlotte not long ago at the Panther Stadium, and up top, along where like and stuff is, you'd see SWAT, and they had like snipers, like their guns set up just in case. I mean, it was like 70, 80,000 people at that concert, 65,000, something like that. Think of all in Wembley. That's what it looked like.
Yep.
And there were snipers there. Nothing happened, thank God. But the White House would be that and then some. I don't know how many people would be there or what that would look like, but it would certainly be cool. And it would need to be streaming as well, for sure.
Yes. Oh, yes, yes. But I would worry about like these guys that are cameramen and camera operators. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you have to like go nuts with security if you're going to do that.
Well, think about this. We're talking about conspiracy theories, right? Correct, logical questions about Epstein and JFK's assassination, the attempted assassination on Trump, the Secret Service failures that day.
Yes.
I have questions, and a lot of people have questions about that. How did that happen? Is it because somebody wanted it to happen? Now that Trump's sort of bowing to a Washington consensus with a lot of his policy ideas, is that less likely to happen? Would it be more likely to happen if Pam Bondi really did have the Epstein files and did what she promised she was going to do? But now he's safer because they're not going to do that. You see what I'm getting at? So, like, if UFC was at the White House, you had all about security and people there. Where's Trump in that moment as far as with the elites and the establishment? Are they trying to get rid of them? Are they like all that matters? So, I don't know. We're speculating.
Yeah, of course. I mean, is it go along to get along kind of thing? You know what I
Right.
mean? Is that a lot of what's going on here with Bondi and Trump and everybody else? It just kind of seems that way, which is crazy. It seems like, they're covering stuff up left and right here.
They are. And look, we were talking about No King's Day. I think that I did a post on social saying,
Yes.
let's celebrate the real No King's Day, meaning the 4th
Yes.
of July.
Of course.
I'm not mad at people who have criticisms of this president because I have a lot right now. We've talked about them here, but that No King's Day, when I saw some of my Democrat voting friends doing that, I laughed out loud when I first saw it, literally. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Here is the other side of a 2024 election in which the sitting president weaponized the American legal system against his political opponent on the flimsiest of charges, trying to throw him in jail, in which his party, the Democratic Party, tried to get their primary political opponent, Donald Trump, thrown off of state ballots, in which an assassination attempt happened coming from somewhere. We still don't know. But the most authoritarian behavior, the Biden administration instructed Twitter to censor speech that was pro-Trump. That's authoritarian king-like behavior. All the things I'm saying. And Democrats at the time were like, well, that's not such a bad idea to censor that speech, to the degree that they would even accept that that's what was going on, which a lot of them just denied.
Right.
They had no problem with Trump sitting in court all that time. And then after the election, it just going away because that wasn't the point. The point was to prevent him from becoming president. None of those Democratic voters had a problem with any of that. They like kings if their name's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, and they have pure executive authority to do anything outside of the Constitution to attack the people they don't like. They're fine with that. So when I saw that No King's Day, I'm like, nah, I'm going to laugh at you. You're a ridiculous person. You like kings. You just like your own. So sorry, I didn't mean to get worked up.
Yeah, no, but 100% true. Because obviously Biden, Kamala, Hillary before that, like, was anybody even voted in by the Democratic Party here? Yeah,
they were
it's crazy.
like a king would be.
Yes.
I mean, they just decide one day against Joe and Jill Biden's better wishes, like, you're not going to be the candidate anymore. Jill Biden supposedly didn't talk to Kamala Harris the whole time. Kamala Harris was installed, and then she lost, and people wonder why. And then they have a No King's Day. Get out of here. I'm not taking you seriously.
The hypocrisy is like, it's so laughable, but it's almost like, wow, they don't get it.
They
oh my
don't
God,
see it.
It's like nuts. Yeah.
Well, that's going back to Kevin Nash. I bet he doesn't see it. He said what he said on the 4th of July. Like, come on. I can't take that seriously.
Man, it is crazy. And I just see people I know too. I'm like, man, the hypocrisy of these people is just absolutely astounding. It's how do you not correlate one thing with the other, or like kind of realize what you're doing and what you're saying? It's just nuts.
You have to be consistent. So, like right now, against the Trump administration, free speech is something I value, and many Americans do. At the beginning of this term, J.D. Vance was in Berlin, Germany, admonishing Germans and the Europeans basically for their anti-free speech laws, where we can go to jail if you insult somebody or use hate speech. I was like, yeah, go J.D. Vance. And now this administration is behind targeting people who might criticize Israel's government, not letting them get jobs in the future on Wall Street, or, penalties. And you just have to be consistent. That's king-like behavior from the Trump administration. It was certainly king-like behavior from the Biden administration. And God knows what kind of queen Kamala Harris would have been, who was during the campaign was saying, I will sic the Department of Justice on platforms that allow misinformation and hate speech. According to who? You? And
yeah, exactly.
like, yeah, that's great. I'm like, y'all are crazy as hell. This woman has to lose. So, yeah, they all like kings as long as it's their own. Trump people and Democrats.
So true. You mentioned Thomas Massey Rand Paul, by the way. What do you think about a 2028 ticket? Is that for real? Is that serious? Would they do it? And what would they run as?
Well, once is floating this America party. We'll see where that goes. I know both men. I've worked for Senator Paul. People mad at them, they're always going to be principled, and you always know how they're going to vote, which way they're 99% of the time. Trump is this guy who might say one thing and do the complete opposite the next day. As far as what that means for the America's political future and Massey and Rand Paul, I think they might grow in popularity even after all the controversy, particularly with Massey, because if things plod along and the Trump administration keeps stepping on its own, so many times, the people with integrity are going to rise to the top. People are going to notice this. It's why Ron Paul was so popular when he ran for president in 2008 and 2012. Hell, Bernie Sanders, who I would never want to see president, I think is wrong about so many things and hypocritical in many ways. But what attracted so many young people to him in 2016 was like, this is this old guy. People don't pay attention to him. He votes the way he wants. He calls himself a socialist. It's the integrity. It's the consistency people are attracted to. So Thomas Massey and Rand Paul for the next 3.5 years, even if they're on the opposite side of the Trump administration, are going to be constitutional conservatives, libertarian-leaning Republicans, genuine small government advocates. And they're already popular. There's as many, if not more, people who are MAGA who voted for Trump who like both those men as the ones that are mad at them. And I think that number in the popularity column will probably go up just because they have integrity, and it shows.
With Musk, right? The America Party, the America First Party, whatever he's calling it. Is that for real? Is he just joking? Is he just saying that? Because he says he can influence, a lot of people and maybe elections and this and that. Is he serious about it? Is that like a legitimate party there?
I don't know, but I will say this. I care about the Republican Party only to the degree that it is doing a lot of things that Trump promised when he ran for president. If it's not, F them. And that's where we're at right now. The problem with the third party is getting on ballots and qualifying for this and da-da-da. Ross Perot sort of changed that in 92 when he did so well against Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush, who probably would have won if not for Ross Perot. And I love Ross Perot, by the way. I don't care. The two-party system is what we have, but I don't care. I want good things to happen. If that's an America party, I'm going to take a look at it. And if somebody can make it happen and jump all the hurdles, including the difficult logistics, it might be the richest man in the world. That's all I'm saying. I am not remotely mad one bit that Elon Musk is threatening a new third party with all his dollars and whatnot behind it.
One of those
he's the world's
things,
richest man. So.
Yeah, I was going to say one of those things though is he is the world's richest man. How much power does he have? Is that a wishy-washy scenario there? It's almost like this guy's got too much money. This guy's got too much power then.
Well, I really love what the Libertarian Party did in 2024. I voted for the Libertarian Party in the past, but it was always a vote of conscience. Like, these people aren't going to be president, but you don't like the two mainstream candidates. What the Libertarian Party did in 2024 is it asked Trump for a few things to convince libertarians to vote for Trump instead of an LP candidate. And a lot did, including the one talking right now. One of the big ticket items they asked for was to grant clemency, a pardon for Ross Ulbricht, who'd been in jail for 11 years for 4 back-to-back sentences, certainly cruel an unusual punishment, which Trump said. Trump freed Ross. Ross has spoken at events I've been at, but after 11 years, he had no hope. My point is the LP got something out of one of the major parties through transactional politics by using its small leverage. Its small leverage helped Donald Trump win the election. Depending on where you're at, you look at the margins of the electoral college and all that kind of stuff. Could an America party do the same thing? Even if it's not like a third major party, which it could be, great. Let's do that. At 34%, you can be president. Sure. Well, look at that. That would be the popular vote. We'll see how it breaks down electoral college wise. That's how it is in Europe. You've got multiple parties. It's not a duopoly. But even if it was just like a bigger libertarian party or something, you'd be like, hey, we've got umpteen million voters. Do A, B, and C, or we're not going to vote for you. Do it. We're going to vote for you. Stuff like that. Like that's worthwhile. Threaten them. That's what they do to us. If you don't pay your taxes, you're going to jail. Well, hey, if you don't do this, candidate X, you're not getting elected. Threaten them.
Right.
Now, I don't mean physically. Is anybody watching that? I'm talking about with your votes at the ballot box, the American way. So, yeah, I think there's more reasons to do that than to not do it, even if it's not a major party, especially with the world's wealthiest man behind it.
Is he Democrat? Is he Republican? Is he a conservative Democrat?
Well,
like, what is he?
Those terms change all the time. In the last 20 years, they've completely flipped. I remember when Democrats ran on Bush's wars are horrible and we shouldn't do that. Now they want to send all their money to Ukraine. They all had the little flags hanging outside their houses. So, all that changes. He was a Democrat. He was friends with Obama because of the Tesla stuff and, all the tech stuff that he does. He was on The View. He was a darling of all that. And I think he had a lot of progressive views, certainly civil libertarian views. He does value free speech. That's why he bought X. It helped Trump win the election because you'd had at least one free speech platform where you could say what was going on and not. I had a column yesterday at Responsible Statecraft, which is the Quincy Institute. It's a bipartisan think tank that focuses on foreign policy. And my column was about Tucker Carlson interviewing Iran's president. And I did this whole history of different news figures, Barbara Walters, Walter Cronkite, interviewing the presidents of Iran and of Russia and Nikita Khrushchev in the 50s and Fidel Castro and Muammar Ahmadinejad, the last Iranian president. Like, that's normal stuff. Journalists don't do that anymore. I wrote a column about that. The reason I'm telling you this, Facebook flagged it and said this is offensive to our community. I'm a political journalist writing a political column with a viewpoint pointing this out. Facebook deemed my viewpoint something people shouldn't see. X wasn't like that. I had no problems on X with that article. So even Mark Zuckerberg saying like, yeah, they pressured us, the government, that's how Facebook still is. That's a legitimate political viewpoint. So, yeah, I think Elon Musk is a guy who's a civil libertarian, had some progressive views. I think free speech and just basic freedom's important to him, which is what made him go right as the left was getting more authoritarian. The king stuff I was talking about earlier that all Democrats ignored and acted like a king who's just arrived right now. He saw that and was like, no. Glenn Greenwald was like that. Matt Taylor, progressives who maintained their basic progressive principles, especially in the way of civil liberties, who are now seen as right wing for being what progressives were 20 years ago. I mean, the stuff that they believe in is what Barack Obama campaigned on in 2008. We can't have the Patriot Act. We can't have them tapping our phones. That's the, civil liberty stuff. Well, now Democrats are like, yeah, we can if they're for Trump. We got to spy on them. Let's do it. Kamala Harris campaigning on the parties have switched. Elon Musk was caught in the middle of all that. And the people that once loved him who were Democrats now hate him for reasons they used to believe in that they don't believe anymore. They've changed. He hasn't, if you see what I'm saying. Now, that's not a blanket endorsement of Musk. He's more complicated than that. Maybe he's changed on a couple things. But at his core beliefs in freedom and civil liberties, he's pretty much the same dude.
The America Party, America First, whatever he wants to call it, does it serve just his interest, though? Because that was the big thing with Doge and a lot of things that they were saying. Like that's great. Some of his ideas are great. Some of the things he's saying are great. But do they serve just his interest? Is that why he's really wanting to push some of this stuff?
Perhaps, and I see people talk about the EV credits and all that. He took a big hit when he endorsed Trump. I'm talking about with his property of X and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. I don't think the world's richest man gives a damn about that. I don't think he has anything to prove. Yes, there's and stuff like that, and you can't be completely irresponsible. I don't think it's that. I think when we're past this time, he's going to be seen as a heroic figure, a philanthropist. People can't see it right now because they got Trump in their brain and they're all twisted up. And, you know, him and Trump hate each other right now. But once we get out of this period and we look back at whatever happens in our future, I think that's how he'll be seen.
When you look at it too, it's just like, I don't like what could happen next. He has a lot of influence. Obviously, MAGA losing some of their base, if you will. It's so maybe he can kind of take that, and if he's with Massey or Paul or just with himself, really, he could take some of the base just of them not being happy with what's going on with what they perceive to be voted for.
I think that might be what you're seeing. We can't tell the future. I just finished a piece for the American Conservative that might come out in the morning. We're talking on July 9th right now. And I titled it, we'll see what the editors do with it. I titled it MAGA versus Ultra MAGA. And this is what I mean by that, to your point, John. MAGA right now is, we love Trump. Trump is right. If Trump said something complete opposite yesterday, now he's saying it, whatever it is on that day, MAGA, Trump. Don't you question Trump, Thomas Massey. Trump, MAGA, MAGA. It's that basic. Ultra MAGA is the people who have been with Trump pretty much since the beginning, precisely because they believed in a lot of what he stood for. No more forever wars. Let's actually have drastic cuts like Doge and Elon promised via the Trump administration. You know, let's not send more money to Ukraine. Let's have a ceasefire in Gaza, stuff like that. Those people are still out there and they're criticizing Trump. That's Tucker Carlson. That's Steve Bannon. That's Rand Paul. That's Thomas Massey. That's Joe Rogan and sort of that podcast universe of guys who helped get Trump elected. Joe Rogan chastised Trump for the Iran airstrikes, for example, did it on air. He said, that's not what we voted for. And he's right. That's ultra MAGA. What makes it ultra MAGA is they're there for those ideas that Trump once represented and is now running away from. Now, could that be part of America Party? It's such a simple name that Elon named it. Maybe. Yeah. Does it reinvigorate the existing MAGA? I don't know, but those people are there and they're not going away, and they're some of the loudest voices out there. I'm very hopeful about that. That's why I'm here. 20 years ago, Mark Levin could be like, you isolationists, you're against the Iraq war, you hate America. And conservatives that listen to him would be like, that's right. That's right, Ron Paul. You hate America. You're against Bush in the war. In 2025, the biggest names on the right are more in agreement with Ron Paul or what I'm saying. And I'm talking about Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, people like that. Steve Bannon and Elon Musk basically have the same foreign policy and they hate each other's guts, but they're part of Ultra MAGA. If you see what I'm saying, that's how broad and diverse and strong it is. So it's not going away. I think that sticks around after Trump's term is over.
Kind of reminds me of Russo and Cornette a little bit in the wrestling world, where they have the same exact views, but they hate each other. But it's so funny when you actually listen to them. Like if you just read a transcription and you're like, oh man, I can't believe Russo's ripping current wrestling, and then you're like, oh my god, that was Cornette that said that. So it's very similar to that, where the guys that just you wouldn't think agree are so agreeable.
Bruce Pritchard always says that Russo's a northern Jim Cornette and Jim Cornette's a southern Russo. And I think there's something to that. Look, I'm a Cornette fan because I agree he's my favorite manager, even more than Bobby Heenan, who's a close number two for me, just, where I grew up in the South and Crockett and all that. And I mean that just how sharp-witted he is and such a good manager. I don't listen to his podcast as often because I just don't like the incessant beating up on AEW for the sake of it being AEW. That bothers me. And I say that as somebody who enjoys listening to Jim Cornette talk about anything and everything. That just gets tiresome to me as an AEW fan. It's too much. But, some of Russo, I disagree. I mean, I agree with Jim Cornette's philosophy about wrestling, certainly a lot more than I agree with Vince Russo's. And I'm not a Russo hater or anything like that. It just is what it is.
When you look at it with like the current landscape of wrestling. I just find it some of those guys, and politics is the same thing. But some of those guys are just negative for negative sake, but they make money off of being negative for negative sake. And like there's a population for that. There's a fan base for it. There are people that love that stuff and eat that stuff up. So even if maybe they don't believe it wholeheartedly and aren't fully believing what they're saying, they love saying it because the fan base out there attaches to it and they make money off of it big time.
Whether they believe it or it's true is beside the point. It's what you just said. Look, there are plenty of conservative outlets. I've worked for some, a lot I wouldn't work at, but like they make money off of AOC. We hate her. Look at how terrible she is. Da, da, da. And she does terrible things. I'm not a fan, but like sometimes she's not, and they're just hyperventilating over nothing, and they make money that way. That's wrestling. That's what you do. You know, Booker T, I think, is critical of AEW in some ways that are unfair. Cornette's at the top of that list and kind of showed people there's this cottage industry where you can make money doing that. Not that that's all he does, and I generally enjoy his podcast. I just don't listen as much because of that. You know, Conan and them kind of do that a little bit. Disco for sure. You know, and more power to them. Let them make a buck, work their gimmick, whatever. I'm not in the wrestling industry. I'm not trying to talk or pretend like I am. But that's what it is. And you have to take it with a grain of salt and look at it through that filter. I like listening to Busted Open because they can be critical of wrestling because they didn't like something they saw, but they're not trying to hate on anybody. I like that. I think Sean Ross Sapp and Fightful are like that. I like that. You know, as a fan, I prefer that over just hating on people.
Yeah, I'm not really for the hate for hate's sake and pretending that something isn't successful when it is. I just find that kind of disingenuous to a certain point. Like they're not really lying, but they're kind of being disingenuous with it, with some of like the negativity when you see the success, when there's proven success.
I remember, and I agree with everything you just said, but to your point, was the last Omega Ospreay was in Japan, what, 5 years ago? Wasn't it? Was it Forbidden Door over there, or am I wrong? Or was it in New Japan is what I'm thinking of. Whatever that spectacular match that everybody was talking about happened, I'm like, all right, I'm going to turn on Cornette and see what he says about this. Because, I mean, Jim Ross was like, that's one of the best matches I ever saw. Somebody's old school as him, and he was correct.
Yeah.
His attitude was basically, people like that? I'm like, boop, turn it back off. I ain't listening to that. This is stupid. Like, don't tell me what I just saw with my own two eyes and what millions of wrestling fans saw and were bedazzled by. I thought was great. Sucks. I'm sorry.
So, January 4th, 2023 was Omega Ospreay won at the Tokyo Dome, which was an awesome match. Then the next match was 5 months later in June of 2023 at Forbidden Door in Toronto, Ontario, which was another unbelievable match. Both matches over 35 minutes, which I know maybe some people will go a little crazy about that, but they were both awesome, and they were both for the IWGP United States Heavyweight title. Omega won the first one, Ospreay won the second. Both were unbelievable matches. Both, match of the years candidate for me anyway for 2023. But that's so funny. I didn't realize he was saying that it sucked. Like nobody would have said that in their right mind. It was a great match.
Right. And yeah, but he was not high on it at all. It was sort of like, do people really like that? This is what people like. And I'm like, yeah, they do. Like, once again, I'm a Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express guy. That is, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. That's where I'm coming from. Nice. But don't tell me Will Ospreay sucks or that Swerve sucks or whatever, because they have a different style. The Rock and Roll Express, this has always amused me about Cornette in particular. The Rock and Roll Express, weren't they told, like, small, we're not going to sell for you, and quit doing all the high spots, and you're too flippy floppy? Like that was the old timers were telling them that. And that's the arch rivals of the Midnight Express, Cornette's team. Yep. But just you think about stuff like that. I remember, and I was a bigger fan of the Young Bucks when this happened, but Rock and Roll Express were in the ring with the Young Bucks. It was on a Dynamite or a pay-per-view. This was a number of years ago. I was there live, and he would always talk about how small the Bucks were. They're the same size as Ricky and Robert. They were standing right there, side by side. Yeah. They're the same size. Like, what are we talking about? But
especially Nick Jackson, who's like 3 inches taller than his brother too. He's like he's not that. I mean, maybe skinny, but they did bulk up a bit. But he's like not really that short. Because I've met them before, and they're not that short. Yeah.
Have you ever stood next to Ric Flair? I have. He's not. He's about my. He's bigger than I am. I'm not a big man, but he's not super tall.
6 foot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so what are we talking about? And they're the Rock and Roll Express. They're my favorite tag team of all time. But no, they didn't look like the Road Warriors. That was part of the gimmick. Like they were rock
Right.
and roll teen heartthrobs. So
And they're fighting from underneath and
that's right.
everything else. Yeah.
That's right.
It just it's just funny. I forgot what I was going to say about the R&R Express, but I had them at that convention a couple years ago, and it's not like they're the giant or anything. I mean, they're kind of short. You know what I mean? Or especially Ricky's very short. So to say some guys are small, and then you're like, wait a second, let's compare them to the guy there. They're not that. Or the Fantastics, or basically the same height as the Rock and Roll Express. Kind of funny to say.
Yeah. And I agree with some of the old timers, and even Billy Corgan said this about his own NWA and how he likes the books, that I don't like that some people who probably shouldn't be in the ring can now easier than they used to. There's not a filter as far as the indie scene and whatnot.
Yep.
Like I wouldn't try to wrestle because I know that would look stupid. Look at me,
Yep.
You see too much of that, and I do think it hurts the product. It's not believable that somebody is big and could do something and was going to get beat by a guy who's 160 pounds or something like that.
Right.
If you're going to be that small, you got to be special. Look at Darby Allin. Nobody questions like, that's a badass dude that will mess you up. He's small, but look how he works. It has to be something like that, not just some runt that, you know what I'm saying? So I agree with the old timers on that as a fan. There's a little bit too much of that, but at the same time, not everybody has to be the skyscrapers to be a star in this business.
True. And now I remember what I was going to say. Lou Thez was talking about how the next generation of guys, the next generation of NWA, flippity floppity, didn't like the way they worked and all this other stuff. And you know who he's talking about? Harley freaking Race. I was like, whoa,
Right.
I was like, that's crazy. So it just always happens that way. Like the older generation just has to say something about the new generation. Like Harley Race, I know Lou Thez is one of the toughest guys ever. Harley Race is probably like the toughest guy ever, and like not to be messed with, and knocking two guys out with one punch type of stuff, at the bar. But just some of the bumps, I guess that he didn't like the bumps that he took, and imagine fast forward to today what Lou Thez would think about some of these guys. It's just crazy.
It's each generation. You will hear CM Punk in interviews talk about like, CM Punk was seen as a newer kind of wrestler in the mid 2000s, Ring of Honor, and just something different. And that was cool. That was part of his charm. And some of the old timers be like, I don't like this, but he'd be like, hey, Harley Race likes me, and Terry Funk and Dory Funk like me. Who cares what you think? They like me. What's your problem? And he was basically saying that's all the endorsement I need. To hell with everybody else, and it was true. And he's correct. He's one of the best in the world today. Like, it's not just a moniker. So yeah, they're going to be complaining about Ospreay and Swerve, and maybe they're going to be complaining about somebody that comes after them. You just kind of have to laugh at some point.
And here's the kicker too about how wrestling isn't as popular, isn't as successful. It definitely may be more niche, or it's not like 33 million people watching Hogan and Andre on NBC or anything like that. But even this weekend, there's about 5 wrestling shows that weekend. I mean, even just go for the week, besides Raw, NXT, AEW, all, Dynamite, then Collision, then TNA, then SmackDown. But just take a look at this weekend. Friday, SmackDown. Saturday, you have NXT. Saturday, you also have AEW. Saturday, you also have Saturday night's main event. Sunday, you have an Evolution pay-per-view. So wrestling, to have all those major shows basically in one weekend, and not if they're not sold out, they're all close to sold out. And now the people will play and say, what's a sellout, what's not a sellout, meaning all the tickets that they put up for grabs or for sale are pretty much all gone. So it's crazy how popular it is, just as far as maybe more niche, but it's still popular, still making a ton of money.
So you missed the Ring of Honor Supercard on Friday, because I'm looking
forward
to Athena versus Thunder Rosa. So there's all the rest that you just said, plus we missed one. I would argue against you, and I could be wrong. This is debatable, is the point I would make. I think wrestling might be more popular right now than it's ever been. And I'm talking about the Attitude Era. I'm talking about Hulkamania. I'm certainly talking about my childhood with Ric Flair, which kind of coincided with the Hulkamania era. And even back in the day when wrestling was at the, wherever your local spot was, every Friday night, once a week. And this is what I mean. Wrestling is the most popular it's been if you're looking at the bottom line and TV deals and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. And the
Yep.
companies say that, and Tony Khan is right to talk about that, and Triple H and Nick Khan are right to talk about that. And I love hearing them talk about it as a fan because I want them to do well. Nothing can be as popular as it was in those eras when the internet was early or even pre-internet or before how we consumed entertainment today. And let me explain what I mean. I'm a hair metal guy. I like Motley Crue and I like Def Leppard. Those were big fans of that genre. But I also like Britney Fox and Cinderella and Kix and Dokken. They weren't quite at that level, but they were big. They were on MTV. They were on Headbangers Ball. There are huge name wrestlers out there. Cody Rhodes, obviously Will Ospreay, MJF, who's about to be in Happy Gilmore too. And people kind of know those names. But there's lots of wrestlers out there that we hardcore fans know, whether they're in Japan or the United States, and they make a good living, but only we know about it. There are lots of bands, rock bands out there who I would absolutely love, but I don't know they exist because there's so many on Spotify and how we consume entertainment. When I was a kid, Madonna was huge. Bruce Springsteen was huge. Tina Turner was huge. And you had a bunch of stars that could play arena and knew about them, whether you liked them or not. We've got Taylor Swift. Any other acts drawing that big have been around for about 20 or 30 years. Maybe Beyonce. But you see what I'm getting at. Look at when Travis Scott showed up on WWE television. He's huge. I was like, who? A lot of people were like, who's that? He's huge. That's the way the culture is now. I was talking to a friend about this particular subject, how we consume entertainment and perceptions of what's big. And he couldn't, was it Chapel Rowan? Do you know that singer?
No.
Okay, to my point. This person's huge. They played here in Charleston. They sold out this outdoor venue with thousands and thousands of people. And my friend said, you can't tell me that most Americans don't know about, I think it's Chapel Rowan, and people out there who know what I'm talking about are laughing at me right now, and you should. And I said, friend who is saying this, do you know who the WWE champion is right now? And this is a guy that used to watch wrestling. You know, there's people I used to watch wrestling. He's one of those.
Yep.
He's like, no. I'm like, it's Cody Rhodes. He's like, is that Dusty's son? I'm like, yeah, it's a big deal. They're making more money now than they ever have. And he beat a guy named Roman Reigns. He said, who's that? To my point, that's the way entertainment is now. Even the biggest thing in wrestling could have a gazillion fans following it and selling out all place, and lots of people don't know what it is. So my mother to this day, who I love, my brother's a UFC fan, I'm the wrestling guy, does not know what the difference is between UFC and WWE. It's all just guys fighting.
Wow, interesting.
How many people
I love when people say UFC instead of MMA. Like they automatically just turn
like
UFC into. Yeah. Hey, I need a Kleenex. You mean tissue? Like, yeah, that's what I said. Or Q-tip or whatever. Yeah. Yep.
In the South, we say, do you want a Coke? What kind?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it is crazy. I always love to ask, just like my father-in-law, who's obviously like in his mid-70s, like, hey, have you heard of this guy? Have you ever heard of this guy? For instance, I'm like Goldberg. He's like, are you kidding me? Of course, blah, blah, blah. And then like Hulk Hogan's like, yeah, of course, Andre the Giant, of course. And then you mentioned some current guys. And he's like, who is it? I'm like The Rock. He's like, yeah, I'm like his cousin. And we're like, oh, okay. He's like, I think I saw him somewhere, maybe. Like, you know what I mean? It's funny, like who they know and who they don't know.
It's just where the culture is. I was having dinner in D.C. at some conference with Glenn Jacobs and two guys that we kind of knew through politics, and they were excited to meet him because they knew who Kane was, right? Because he was in a movie where just everybody knew. Yep. And we got to start talking about wrestling, and Glenn brought up Roman Reigns. What a big star. They had no idea who it was. This is when he was still champ and the middle of the bloodline stuff. And, you know, those guys have TVs and computers and streaming, and they don't know. That's just where things are. So to my original argument, I think you could argue that wrestling's as big as it is right now. We just don't realize it because the culture is not as connected as it was in time prior. You know, when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan in 1964, everybody watched it. It had nothing to do with if you like the Beatles or not. There was one show, the Ed Sullivan Show, and that was the act that night. That's what you did. You know, there's two other networks. Now there's just so many things. Right. I mean, people cut the cord on cable because there's so many things you can watch now. But I think wrestling might be, you'd have to look at by what metrics, as big today as it's ever been.
If you certainly go by money, it definitely is. And people used to do that for Austin when they were comparing him to Hogan, because obviously Hogan, arguably the biggest name ever, the Babe Ruth, if you will, of wrestling. So they were saying, oh, with inflation and more ticket prices and maybe big arenas or whatever, like, oh, okay, Austin is maybe not big arenas, but still like maybe more arenas or some metric that they were doing, like Austin's making more money. Well, if you take Hogan and his time and you put it, so that could have been inflation. But if you're going to do that, and those people argue Austin and Attitude Era all day long, then you have to argue Roman Reigns, who's the first ever $1 billion champion, and he
Yeah.
literally turned WWE around. No offense to John Cena, they weren't really doing that great with Cena on top. All of a sudden, Reigns is on top for 4 years, 5 years as champion, and they're $1 billion company. You got to give him some credit for that, and obviously that means that he might be a bigger draw than Austin, according to the making more money. You know what I mean?
You do. And the old timers, I would love when Jim Cornette would like do the math on all the territories, how often they ran shows and like what the average was, and add it up and be like, we were making more money back then than Hulkamania. And he had a point, right? Just with how widespread wrestling was. They come to your town once a week. He had a point.
Right.
All those old school guys use money as the metric. How much did you draw? That's all that matters. That's what they talk about. Well, they're drawing right now because of the TV rights. That's the big thing. That didn't exist in the past. As much money, if not more, than they ever have. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm a wrestling fan, and they talk about it all the time, and I don't think they're lying.
Yeah. Yep. And obviously we see the numbers because they're the public company. They got to release the money. The biggest profitable revenue, everything's profitable, and they're multi-billion-dollar company. And Reigns was the first $1 billion champion. You could say Cody's the second $1 billion champion they had. So you gotta give them credit. But let's wind it down here and head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Jack?
You can find me on Twitter or X. I call them both so people know what I'm talking about. I'm Jack Hunter 74, and you can that handle. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And if you follow my X, you can find any of the columns I write for various places. A little bit of wrestling, certainly a lot of politics, but I welcome you to come check it out.
All right. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here and next time for a little Capital and Kayfabe. See you next week.